Hey, welcome back to Boot Camp. Those of you just finishing up with session 4 on disciple making will probably find this next session just a great follow-up to that as we focus on small group startup.
Small groups have been huge for our church, bringing people together to grow deeper in their relationships with others in the church. People are being able to be vulnerable with each other, to be real. Currently, the way we have our small group structured is at the beginning is a time of fellowship, but intentional questions being asked so that people can grow in their understanding of each other and to be just raw and real with each other. And then the second half is really geared towards biblical literacy, being able to read the Bible, to understand the Bible. That was one of the things that we saw as a need. The people that were coming to our church, we needed to grow in our understanding of Scripture. So we have a young woman's, a young guy's, an older couples group, a younger couples group. And it's been really nice for our church to be able to find people that are in a similar stage of life as themselves and to just grow together, which has been fun. Same curriculum for everyone right now. In order to launch it and to launch it well, to be able to bring up leaders that can lead, the training was a lot easier to be able to have it uniform. That way we could identify when problems did arise, if it was something with our structure, or if it was just individual groups. We go in 12-week segments. We take a week off after, and people can drop out or jump in after those 12 weeks. We know that there's an intimacy building within that group. We have conversations with some of the key people in that small group to be able to split it up into new. So our whole hope with small groups is more of a multiplication than an add-on. We make that very clear to our small group leaders. Our small groups know that it's not just going to be this group forever. We want new people to come in, feel welcome, to feel cared for, and that you can build that same relationship group with a new set of people. We utilize media. It really has allowed our leadership team to feel equipped. If we were able to provide you with an 8-minute video, and then we can formulate questions for you that you can facilitate. So that way, if someone new does come in, we get them on Right Now Media. They can catch up on the videos, or like I said, they're 7-8-minute videos. Utilizing the resources that Right Now Media gives us, we're just using that, and it's been a huge blessing to our ministry in small groups.
I don't know if you've been a part of a small group in the past, similar to our conversation around disciple making. If you've been a part of a small group and that's been a great experience for you, I probably hardly need to say a word in this particular dimension of new church development. If you have not, I don't know if I can say enough. I find this fairly consistently with new church start pastors. If they've had a small group experience in the past, they just intuitively go there. And if it's been a good one, they replicate it, and it becomes just an incredible source of effectiveness and growth in their project. But if they haven't, they put it off, they kick the can down the road, they do all kinds of other things. And 1-2 years later, they say, you know what? There's a reason why my church plant has only got 40 people in it. There's a reason why I've only got 25, 35 people in worship. I think I finally have to recognize is that I never built small groups. They are more than just some faddish trend. They're more than just something else to be busy with. Small groups are the nuts and bolts of church planting. And you're going to understand why that's to be true as we work our way through this material. So I hope that you're leaning forward if this is an area you need to grow in, and that you'll make the most use of this training session. Probably like in any of these training sessions, there is no substitute for you getting next to planters that are doing the work out in the field and learning from them. So I never want to shortcut that. Find an effective church plant. Find an effective ministry that has the features that we're talking about through these boot camps, that has them in place, and get them. Learn from them. If possible, learn from these boot camp trainings, and you'll be much further ahead. In the development of your new church start, you've been out making lots and lots of contacts. In the development of those contacts, you've begun to see some sparks. and you now have begun to think about a discipleship process. In the course of those folks kind of getting connected to you one after another, you've come to the place of saying, you know what, I think I've got 4 or 5 folks. I don't know what to do with them other than to just kind of connect with them one-on-one, tell them that I'm planning a church, something's coming. Maybe you've shared the launch partnership brochure with them. They're going to be partners with you in your startup project. All that's great. But now, what's the first thing you can invite them to, other than to your home for dinner, to hang out, to build relationship? Really critical. And that's where small groups show up. They are an essential building block of a new church start. They incubate leaders. That is to say, the folks that you get involved in that small group that you form at about the stage you're at right now, that happens at your house, in your living room on a Tuesday night or a Sunday night or whenever, you're training people. You can be apprenticing a leader. You can be showing people what hospitality looks like. You can be helping them understand how to lead a Bible study. So you're incubating leaders and you're growing new disciples in preparation for the launching of public worship. And you're creating a place for discipleship and assimilation after the launch as well. So small groups kind of have an echo. The first iteration is a place to go before launch. The second iteration is a place to stay connected after launch. Way too often, people who are not connected to a small group drift off. They become infrequent attenders or occasional attenders or worse. So small groups help to build the capacity to grow larger. I have rarely, and I mean if ever, have I found a church plant that can grow large without also growing small. And really, you have to get small first if you ever have a hope of getting large. If you attach small group development later, after you start public worship, after, usually you only get a small portion of folks. And most people, they built their whole identity and their relationship to the church around public worship on Sunday mornings. And if that's going to grow larger, their needs for personal connection, sharing what's going on in their life, it's just not going to happen. And you're pre-programming them to become occasional attenders, marginal attenders. So far more important that you build a small group system early and begin and start a small group in your home today, this week, this month, and begin to invite people into it. Grow it to 12 and then launch another one. Grow that one to 12 and then launch another one. Most new church starts, we like to see 4 to 6 small groups with 10 to 15 adult attenders in each one. That becomes the base from which you can launch public worship and know that you've got some depth and some strength behind it. Preparation for today, have a look at that website, www.smallgroups.com. There's a lot of information there, more than I could ever teach or train into you in this session. Look specifically at small group models because you'll see that there's many different models for small group. There's kind of a bread and butter model that I think of as a Bible study, sermon feedback, sermon discussion, small group. It's very easy to launch. It doesn't require a lot of scholarship. It doesn't require a lot of training. It's simple and reproducible, where people hang out and discuss the message from last week, read your scripture and have a conversation, eat dessert, pray for each other, and hang out. That's kind of a bread and butter small group, but there on the smallgroups.com you'll find other forms of small group. During the pre-launch phase of a new church start, you usually have to launch lots of different types of small groups. And after launch, you'll probably have an 80-20 equation where 80% of your small groups will be fairly similar. That is, simple, reproducible groups built around, in what I observe to be a very effective strategy, reading the scripture again, discussing the message of the day. That becomes kind of the majority group culture. And then you'll have some other groups that'll be mom's timeout group or a dad's fishing group or whatever. Again, small groups, really, really critical. Listen to the podcast there that I've indicated that you can copy and paste and find online. Review some documents that are on the Dakotas and Minnesota web pages, Smart Thinking About Sustainability and Simple Steps to Reproducing Small Groups, and then a great read, Sticky Church by Larry Osborne. If you read and review those documents, you will have covered much of what we're going to cover in this podcast today. So jump in with me. Small groups and church planting, the biblical basis for this is really found in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 42, as the early believers met together and then met from house to house, and in the one another's that occur over and over again in the New Testament. You just can't do it. You can't do the kind of interpersonal stuff that humans want to do. You can't do it in a public worship service, or you're really going to become a frustrating place for most people to be a part of. I mean, when you get around to that time in public worship where everybody's got to share their prayer requests, you can just imagine, and I've been to those churches, and I don't want to go back. Because you got to listen to prayer requests from folks that you don't know from Adam. That just becomes kind of a source of checkout, annoyance, irritation. On the other hand, when I sit in a group of a dozen folks that are my friends and somebody shares what's going on in their life and says, man, I need somebody to pray for me because my life's going haywire, I am so tuned into that because they're my friends. It's a totally different dynamic. This is essential. The one another's of the New Testament, of which there are many. Pray for one another, support one another, encourage one another, love one another. Bear one another's burdens, encourage each other. You can't do those in a big church setting. You need a small group. And the strategic nature of groups in church planting can be summarized in those 5 points I have there. The groups are a building block for the pre-launch phase of the church, and groups are a post-launch sticky place for people to connect and form lasting friendships. Groups provide a place for discussion around Christian growth and struggles and maturity. And I've heard people say, well, it's kind of light. Well, it can be, or it can cycle, and some group meetings it may be light and some may not be so light. Really, this is up to the group leader to kind of gauge the temperature of the group and what's the group ready for in terms of how gritty of a conversation. But in time, things tend to get more serious as people open their lives more. Groups provide a place for multiple gifts to be used, to serve. Somebody else can host. In fact, it's never a good idea to be the leader and the host, and the person responsible for keeping track of all the prayer concerns around the circle. In other words, division of labor, really, really critical. Use it in small group. It's a way of growing leaders and helping people find ways to serve. And then group involvement develops commitment in people, deepening their ties to the core values of the ministry. People just start to get more committed to what you're about. When they start building those relationships, they're tied in a little closer to what you're trying to do as a new start. Begin to think about developing a plan for group formation. That's really what we want you to do during this session today, is to start to think about a plan for small group formation. Here are some steps that could be very useful for you in that. Start a group in your home or in some other space. I think homes are great places to do it because they're, again, simple, reproducible. Many people can then be a host because most people have a home. So it's just a way of creating a very simple and quickly reproduced ministry gathering. So working from the contacts that you have, make and form a group to invite people over. Maybe it's just dinner, an opportunity to get to know one another and say, hey, just part of our dinner together, I want to give us a chance just to pray for each other. And I'm going to do that tonight. So anybody have anything around the dinner table they want me to pray for? That just in and of itself kind of breaks the ice. And then to say, hey, this was so great tonight. I'd like to invite y'all back in another week or 2 weeks and have a conversation with you about what it looks like to actually engage the life of Jesus, the power of Jesus, the message of Jesus, and just keep work on getting to know one another and share a meal together and have a conversation and pray for each other. There's a place to take some folks who are showing the initial interest in your new church start. Food has an amazing way of opening people up. Everybody brings something to the meal. It has an amazing way of engaging a sense of friendship and relationship. That's one model. You may form a human interest group or a service group. But again, I think during the phase that you're at right now, I can't emphasize enough that at some point, launching a Bible discussion group is really what you want to do. And it could meet in your home, or you may choose to meet in another place. But get that going and work on that with your coach. Set a deadline for yourself to begin to think about inviting some of those contacts that are a little warmer, some of the folks, as you're making those daily and weekly and monthly contacts and building your list. Start to identify folks that you would like to invite. Develop a plan to multiply your groups as you broaden the base of your contacts. Some groups may be explicitly faith-based and some may be less so during this kind of gathering phase. Start a golf league, start a bikers club, start a poker night, whatever you want to do to get people together and to begin to group people together and build relationship. And then to just say, hey, this is part of our vision for our new church start, is to build relationships, build friendships, and use groups to do that, and use interest groups to do that. But then to also say, and we're also offering groups that are faith formation groups, spiritual formation groups, where people can begin to think about what it looks like to orient their lives around the teachings of Jesus. The website that I shared with you earlier may provide some good ideas for you. Establish at least one group as your key, simple, and reproducible discipleship group. Think about that format that's easy to teach others to reproduce. 30 minutes for just kind of hang out, eat dessert. 30 minutes to have a conversation around being a disciple, to be like Jesus in this situation that we're in right now. And then 30 minutes to pray for each other. 30. For most groups, a 90-minute time is optimal. In most settings, if you begin to meet in your small group in an evening for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, or even in an afternoon, for most people, if their meeting goes for longer than 90 minutes, people begin to get frustrated. They've got busy lives, they've got other things going on. You have to take control of the time or you'll lose people. I can't say this strong enough. I've watched it over and over again, where the group leaders all jacked up about the experience. And the people are playing nice, but in the back of their minds, they're saying, I don't know that I could come back to this because it went 2.5 hours. They said it was going to be an hour and a half, and now my day is kind of off balance. So develop a format that is simple and reproducible and that is a success formula. In most cases, your launch will be tied to your group development. If you have just a few groups with just a low attendance in those groups, you're likely to have low attendance in your launch and a weak church plant. In most cases, small group development is predictive of the long-term health and vitality of a church plant. If you stumble at this point, you're not going to get very far out of the gates. And so make it your goal to figure this out, to learn how to do it. If it's not intuitive to you, get close to pastors, leaders who have leveraged this marvelously and learn from them. And make it your goal to have 4 to 6 vibrant groups with 4 to 6 group leaders and 4 to 6 different hosts, 8, 10, 15 people in each group. Make it your goal to hit that benchmark minimally before you launch and go to public worship. You can probably tell I'm pretty passionate about this dimension because I've just watched over and over and over again how plants that stumble down the road have to go back and get this right. So don't make that mistake. Get it right from the get-go. Start up a small group yourself. Find a host location. Design a success model and begin to invite people. And consider the people that you invite as potential small group leaders, expecting them to start their own groups. I worked with a planter here recently who did just that. And as a result, they were able to reach much farther out into their mission field because others were inviting now into their home, starting small groups from their contacts. And so they were able to multiply their effectiveness. So you want to see a successful experience with your first small group. So what you can do is launch that small group and imagine it as a 3-month experience in which you're going to train, equip people to be small group leaders, and then release them to launch their own groups. Teach them how to be a leader. Share the leadership responsibility around the circle. Create a simple format for having a Bible discussion with some simple discussion questions based on a text. And when you can reproduce that simply, and when others can do that and it's not so complicated, they don't have to be a Bible scholar. All they have to do is be able to read the questions and ask open-ended questions to the group. Keep a few folks from dominating the discussion and invite others into the discussion. And stick on that 90-minute or so format. When you can get that simple formula standardized, you're going to find that you can build blocks and keep people connected, and then you're going to be able to move your time on to the next project rather than having to always go back and try to capture people that, now that you're losing them, right? When they're connected to a small group, then you can go on and work on the next project in developing your start. So develop a format that's simple, reproducible, and keep the group open to new people and to mature it into a prototype model. Do a training session, train them. New church starts that have a training session every 3 to 5 months and are always training group leaders. Then they can launch those new groups at a rapid rate during the early phases. Continue to share your launch partnership brochure with each group participant, asking them to consider a commitment to be part of the launch team. Sharing your pre-launch goals and engaging others, sharing that brochure. Remember, you need at least 40 to 50 people committed before launching weekly worship. But that's a minimal. That's an absolute minimal. Your hope is that they'll all invite one, and then that plus some promotional work, and you can get well over 100 people at your opening worship service. That's just the minimal, because that becomes often a flash in the pan and you'll drop way down. And so you want to get as high up that scale as you can in terms of number of people in a small group having committed to that launch partnership brochure. Keep building your contacts, 25 a week, 100 a month for 10 months. Remember to pray for people, pray a blessing on them, ask for God to open their lives to the ministry that you're seeking to bring through Christ to them. Revisit your timeline. Do you need to add new post-it notes? Maybe you can start to think, I'd like one small group established by the end of this month, and then another small group established by the end of each month successively between now and launch. There's some post-it notes for your timeline, perhaps, and you can include dates for identifying group host homes and training sessions, etc. And then meet with your coach to review your progress on this session before moving ahead. Well, I hope that you can take this lesson and translate it into field language that will work for you. As is so often the case, the creative nature of a church planter sometimes wants to imagine that there's some way around something that may be unfamiliar. And I'd like to humbly suggest that this one may not offer you that option. That most new churches have to figure out a way to get small if they want to grow to be of any size at all. And to establish this early, figure this one out early, is my challenge to you today. Hey, God bless you and your good work. Talk to you soon.